This is the first computer in the collection, an Amiga 500. I bought this off of eBay about 5 years ago, but never really did anything with it until quite recently. It came without any video cables or an official power supply, but it did come with a mouse and a modified AT style power supply that's been set up to connect to the Amiga. The computer does work fine, although there are a few issues that do need fixing. The mouse functions, although the movement is very stuttery. There's corrosion on the wheels, and I had to replace 2 of the photo transistors inside it to get horizontal movement working at all, but it's still not smooth. As an interim solution, I've got an old PS2 style mouse set up using an adapter to get a working mouse with it. It was cheaper than a new Amiga mouse, but I would still like to try and fix this one up properly when I can figure out how. Getting decent video output was a problem I ended up making far more complicated for myself than it needed to be. It's a story for another video though. I ended up finally buying an Amiga 520 modulator, which outputs RF and composite video, and using that I get a good composite picture on my TV. I really would like to get a proper Commodore RGB monitor for it, but those are hard to find, they're quite expensive, and people often don't want to ship them, which is understandable because they often break during shipping. Here you see me attempting to show the work of art that is the power connector from the AT power supply, but I fail miserably at keeping it in shot. Rest assured it looks awful, but seems to work fine, so props to whoever made it. Now you can also watch as I succeed just as well at trying to plug the thing back in and eventually give up, hoping that you won't notice. To get software running on the Amiga, I have a Gotek floppy drive emulator hooked up, which lets me load disk images straight from a USB stick. This thing works absolutely fantastically. I still have the original floppy drive over here. I plan to put it back in at some point, but for now I can just connect it up by swapping the ribbon cable over from the Gotek if I want to load things off of any of my old floppies, of which I have a lot. Okay, so some projects that I want to do with this Amiga. The exterior visuals are quite mottled. I think the previous owner maybe had to go at retro brighting it and failed, so I want to try and fix that if I can. The power supply is also quite loud, so I'd like to either fix it or just replace it. The mouse needs fixing, but I still need to investigate what the remaining problem is. And the floppy drive likely needs a clean. It's quite loud, louder than I think it should be, and I've had some disk read errors that are inconsistent in a way that makes me think it's the drive rather than the disks that are the problem. On to the next computer, the Commodore 64. I bought this a month or 2 ago. It was just the computer itself without any cables or power supply. I bought a reproduction power supply for it and built a composite video cable by soldering a standard RCA cable onto a 5-pin DIN connector, and this thing is working fantastically. I did have to pull it apart to clean some corrosion off the PCB under the keyboard to fix some of the keys not quite connecting properly, but other than that I haven't really had any issues with it. I have also bought a floppy drive emulator for this one, and that works okay. The main projects I have planned for this are to play around with its rather large game library and to learn some 6502 assembly language and try making some of my own games for it. This is the Commodore VIC-20. This was an impulse purchase a few weeks ago, and I haven't got around to even trying to get it running yet. As you can see, it's absolutely filthy, and it came with this interesting Arfon Micro VIC Expander case. The VIC-20 can sit inside this, connected to that board there, which allows you to connect multiple cartridges simultaneously and actually switch between them. It seems to be some sort of third-party expansion. The first project with this one is to source or build a power supply for it, clean the crap out of it, and just try to get it working. This should give you a better idea of just how filthy this thing is. I think it was kept in a garage, uncovered for about 30 years. Next up is the Behemoth, the Commodore 1541 floppy drive. This is a 5¼ inch floppy drive for the Commodore 64 and the VIC-20. I haven't tested this to see if it works yet. I have no reason to think it won't. I have acquired some 5¼ inch floppies to test it with those, so that'll be a future project. This actually came included with the VIC-20 when I bought that. You can see that it's had a slight modification to it, adding what I think is just a power switch to the front of the device. My understanding is this was a pretty common modification to these. This is a ZX Spectrum, which was another impulse purchase from eBay this time. You can see that this is a bit scuffed up. It has what looks like maybe some glue on the bottom of it. It's missing the little rubber feet that should be in the corners. And the major thing is that this actually has a fault. So when I bought this, it came with the original power supply, original cables, and I was able to plug it in and get it working on my television, but the video output was essentially corrupted. Going into some detail on that and fixing that issue will be the subject of my next video.